Want to say thank you everybody for coming to our Lunch and Learn. We do this every single month, typically with a different topic. And this month we have Matt from True Venture, who is the CEO and founder of True Venture Marketing. He'll tell you all about himself in a second after I finish telling you about him as well. But we're really excited to have him. He's great at what he does. And he has been doing this company since he was 21 years old. So a very impressive guy. And now you can do your introduction.
Yeah. Long story short, 7 years ago or 8 years ago or so, I met up for coffee with my freshman dorm mate. It's been a few years since we talked, and I was like a sophomore in college, I think, or junior in college. And he had this idea to start a business. And I was like, that's crazy. But kind of decided to hear him out. And we didn't even know what kind of business we wanted to start. So we literally started from, well, what needs does the market have? And we arrived at this idea that people need a better way to get rid of or sell their used iPhones. We found out there's a market for used iPhones in developing countries like India and all over the place. There's a market for used iPhones. And so we actually, he set out with some engineering friends of his to learn how to code. And I'm not a computer programmer. I tried to do that for about 10 minutes and realized, okay, programming is really not my thing. I was studying finance at the time and pretty much just took over the business side of things. We ran that company for about 2 years. We bought and sold, we built actually some incredible software that allowed people to sell their phone just by clicking a few buttons. We figured out logistics and we bought and sold a few hundred phones. And realized that we had just tons of problems with the business. But one thing we did really well was marketing. And it led me to a career of working, early on working with a lot of startup companies. I worked with startups from all over the world till later, actually in 2017, starting True Venture Marketing. And actually, I worked with, really early on, I worked with one of the founders of Startup Envy, Eric, for a while as I was just getting started entrepreneurship. And I'm very excited to be here. My background in finance has led me down this path where data is very interesting to me, and I have hopefully a little more knowledge on data and analytics than the average bear, but I'm still no genius. What I really like to do is though find simple ways to apply analytics to larger problems. And today, the three things I want to cover, and I'm hoping that you can walk out of here with, are one, what are the common pitfalls that people who are early into data analysis, what are those common pitfalls that you want to avoid? And how can you find simple ways around them? Two, it's actually kind of a project management thing, but how can you prioritize the projects that are going to be most impactful to your goals? And I know we have people from all kinds of different backgrounds here, but if you're with a Pioneer Center, how are you going to get more people in the door? Maybe that's your goal. And so how can you prioritize projects that are most likely to do that? Without costing you an arm and a leg or tons of money or tons of time. And three is how do you embrace data and create a culture of being informed and being data driven at your organization? Some of us here are probably managers or even CEOs, some people here own companies or consultants. Well, in those kinds of roles, you can't be the go-to for every single decision. But if you can create a data-informed culture at your company, you can empower your teams to make decisions based on data rooted in what's best for your company. And that is just a fantastic goal if you can get there. So that's what I'm hoping we can take away. And I wanted to start first, analytics and data can be a little intimidating. But we really use it every day, no matter what we do, no matter if you're a data analyst for IBM or you're, just a high school student. You get in the car, what's in front of you?
The road.
The road's in front of you. What's a little closer? The dashboard. What we have our speedometer, we have our RPMs, we have our gas. We use analytics just to inform how we operate our lives, whether we know it or not. And in business, it's no different. In marketing, it's no different. We look at things like spend, reach, clicks, checkouts, ROAS, return on ad spend. How much money are we getting back for every dollar we spend? LTV, what's a customer worth to the company? Whether you're in marketing or if you're an entrepreneur or if you work for a marketing organization, these are all metrics that can be important and can inform how you operate, how you run ad campaigns. And especially, this is startup NV, so I thought I'd have to call out LTV and CAC, customer acquisition cost. These are like lifeblood metrics that every startup aspires to learn, and they're really hard to get a handle on it, to really pinpoint. But if there's just one common challenge with analytics today, is that we have dashboard after dashboard after dashboard after dashboard after dashboard. I could go on and on and on. We're completely inundated with data. And basic psychology, the principles of psychology tell us that the number of choices or variables that we have, as that increases, what happens?
No decision gets
made. It's harder and harder to make a decision as we, have more input. I saw a cartoon actually the other day that made me laugh, and it's like 6 people in a boardroom, and they're staring at a dashboard, and someone says in a little bubble, "We'll make a decision as soon as we've considered all 5,220 variables." We call it analysis paralysis. And that is probably the biggest pitfall that I see, especially like entry-level people or just anyone who's not familiar with using dashboards. Like I even fell trapped to this as I was, going through finance school. I had a background in statistics. It took in more statistics classes than anything else, and still ran into this problem where trying to solve a problem, and I go open up Google Analytics and I just stare at the screen and like go flip from page to page to page. And if that's your strategy, you might learn a little bit about your market, but you might already know that about your market. Say you sell purses. Oh, it looks like most of our buyers are female. Like, so the easy strategy around it and the easy workaround is actually to narrow your view and start with, think like a scientist. What's something that all scientists start with? Say they start with a hypothesis. Exactly. And in order to use data to your advantage, first start with a hypothesis. And once you have a hypothesis, odds are that you're going to realize there's only, 1 or 2 things you're looking to impact at the end of the day. You're at the Pioneer Center. How do we get more people in the door? How do we, what's the best price point for our tickets? What's if we're going to spend ads, what's the best channel to spend ads on? If you start with asking a question, you'll get a much better idea of what data is important to that question. And so by narrowing our view, we can act a lot faster when we're looking at data. I thought I'd bring in a couple of examples of creative uses of data. The very first one, this really stood out to me because it actually brings in like pricing psychology and buyer psychology. I just saw this on Twitter. So Austin, I don't even know this person, but he calls out, there's this pricing strategy by Steph Smith. Steph Smith is, I think she's like a digital marketer influencer. Her pricing strategy was to increase the price of her ebook by $5 for every 30 ebook copies sold. Now this is a really fascinating pricing strategy because it plays on that FOMO and that idea of scarcity, or, oh, if I don't buy now, I'm gonna have to pay more, which is like brilliant. But there's another way to look at it, which is it brings kind of that view in of, well, what do we set our price at? If you start with that and you combine it with this kind of pricing strategy, you can increase your price and then figure out when do people stop buying, right?
Just so you know, we had Mark Stiving talking about pricing,
Uh-huh.
and he said you keep increasing the price until the first step is they're gonna bitch, but still buy. So the
Oh,
next step you'll get to is when they don't buy. Then you go back to the bitch but buy price.
I've never heard that, but I mean, it follows this. It's the same idea, but yeah, I've never heard that. That's awesome. Another pricing strategy. I bet that, Steven probably would run circles around me on pricing. I'm not at pricing, but that's a specialty. My go-to, it's really hard for most of us to have enough traffic or enough volume right off the bat that we can do a pricing strategy like that. But say you have a startup and you're trying to set your price point, just call people and ask, hey, what's too high for you to afford and what's too low for you to trust? I'm sure, yeah, Steven could really.
But now what you're talking about is a really basic tenet of startup is talk to your customers.
Talk to your customer, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so simple, but it's actually really hard to do. Another applied use of analytics, this is actually kind of where we got our start, was channel testing. So, if ask the question, well, where should we put our marketing money? And create and conduct a test just around that. If you think, there's all these different channels you could invest in. What are the, maybe pick the top 3 that are most likely, according to what your competitors do. Pick the top 3 channels and put, say, $2,000 in each of them, and then measure which of these channels gets us the cheapest cost per lead, or the cheapest cost for maybe sales qualified lead, or if you're selling a product, which of these gets us the cheapest customer acquisition cost. And if you've narrowed your view to a hypothesis of, or even a test of which we want to find out which channel performs best, you have a really good starting point. And we actually did this to start for a company called Eva Gifting Assistant. That was our very first startup client that we really helped grow exponentially. And Eva, it was actually 2 founders who they'd immigrated from India. They're really brilliant people who done really well over in India. They moved to the US on a gifted and talented visa, and then started this company, EvaBot. And it was a gifting assistant where, say, if I wanted to send Brian a gift, I could send Brian a link, just a copy and paste, send him a link, and Brian would click on it, and it would ask him questions of hey, do you like coffee or tea? Do you like savory or sweet? And then as soon as he completed that questionnaire, it would send him a gift based on his preferences. Well, Eva came to us and they had 0 inbound traffic. They had 0 inbound leads. They had an idea of who they wanted to target. They had no idea where they should invest their marketing dollars. And they were doing just a few $1,000s of revenue a month. I think less than 2,000. But they knew they needed to crack inbound. And they had recently raised some startup funding. And we helped them create a strategy, or we created a strategy to test, I think it was Google ads, LinkedIn ads, and Facebook and Instagram ads. And we did just that. We put $2,000 into each channel. And within a month and a half, we had hard data that informed us that Facebook and Instagram was the way to go.
Did you know going in that you were going to wait 6 weeks, or how did when you started out, how much time did you have?
So we had a rough estimate. I mean, we set our daily budgets at a point where we knew how much we'd spend. And we pretty much it was actually just me when we first started this, but I like worked my ass off to make sure we hit our targets and like launch the campaigns quickly. We didn't launch with great ads or anything. Like it was definitely like speed over perfection. And we had a rough idea that if we spent, I didn't know the right number at the time, but we had a rough idea that if we spent like 2,000, we probably would have some statistical significance. And actually, I'll get into that in just a bit, like some tools we use to inform that, because it's less about how much time your ads are running for and more about, say if you're running a campaign like this, it's more about how much traffic you generate, how many conversions you get, and if your data is statistically significant. Now, it's kind of intimidating, statistical significance. Like, I don't know if any of you remember, took any stats classes, but like, I have like nightmares of doing R value calculations in a stats class on a spreadsheet. There are simpler ways nowadays. We have the internet. There's like free A/B testing calculators. You put in your numbers and they spit out a value of this is statistically significant or no, you need to collect more data. And I'll show you some of those tools. And the framework we used though was we started with channels. We helped them narrow down to Facebook and Instagram. And we invested like all of our time and resources into just scaling those channels up. Next, we tested audience within there. And then from there, we started really aggressively testing creative. And over the next 2.5 years, we grew Eva from doing like less than $5,000 a month to doing over $250,000 to like $300,000 a month in revenue. And like just by following this process of starting with broad sweeping tests, what channels to, what audience, what creative, what message, what landing page, what ad, all of that. And all along the way, actually, this is kind of like the how long question. We were using tools like this. So Neil Patel, has anyone heard of Neil Patel? So Neil Patel's a famous marketer for all of you who don't know who he is. And he has a free A/B testing tool on his website that is really good. It's dead simple. I have the link right here. And I'll share the presentation after. So you can just, go click on it. It's completely free. You don't even have to enter like your email or anything. And what you do is, you just enter the number of visitors on your page and the number of overall conversions. And if you have a B test, you add that in there. And then it tells you if your test can, how much better it converted. More importantly, they give you this value of how certain are they, or can you be, that your test is statistically significant. Like for us at True Venture Marketing, we're running like all kinds of tests all the time, and it's hard to tell like when is it time to pull the plug on something or to let it play out longer. You don't want to cut off a marketing campaign too early just because, you have 10 clicks and one campaign has 2 leads and the other one only has 1. Like that could just be completely random chance. But if you get enough data and as you collect more, then you'll just want to keep checking this tool until you know that, all right, our data is valid. Does anyone have any questions or anything about this?
So if they put in 300 visitors
Mm-hmm.
and they got 10, is it the 1,000 visitors that makes it significant?
It's kind of a mix. So the less conversions you have, and like if you have say 20,000 visitors and 10 conversions, it's going to be really hard to get statistical significance on that. On like just because your B test is going to have so many visitors as well, and so it becomes really difficult to get confidence when you have a small number of conversions. The calculation takes into consideration like both the number of conversions and the top of funnel event. And I don't remember exactly how it's calculated. But I know in finance class or like econometrics classes that I took, like I did a ton of these, and you basically you're assigned like there's like charts that you go reference, and eventually you'll find like a formula just for the numbers and variables that you have.
If you actually had a client that had like 20,000 visitors and 3 conversions, wouldn't you be telling them,
You probably need to
you
stop.
need to improve this?
Yeah. Well, and like we've had some clients that, and actually this feeds really well into our next point. It's like we've had clients that just really struggled to convert website traffic. And it presents a lot of opportunity. Like we had, we actually use an A/B testing, like website building tool called Unbounce. But we've had a client that had a 0.7% conversion rate to lead, not even to purchase, but just 0.7% to lead on their ads traffic to the homepage. And so, I mean, if you're spending they're spending a lot. It's B2B. They're spending like $5 a click, and they're getting, they have to get 110 or 120 clicks just to get a conversion. Like just to get a lead, they're spending $500 or $600 a lead, which is tough to support depending on the industry you're in. And we went in, we helped them improve the landing page. Like we weren't able to like 10x if we were at least able to double their conversion rate with some A/B testing and some best practices. And it really, it makes a huge difference on their business because they just doubled their leads.
Cut the price in half.
Cut, yeah, and you do that. You cut the cost per lead in half, and you double your leads. So if you double your budget, then you can quadruple. It's such a powerful thing, and we'll get into that a little more. One of our favorite tools for doing like A/B testing on landing pages. Is anyone in here building landing pages actively for marketing? Maggie, OCG, absolutely. So Unbounce is like the simplest drag and drop page builder that I've ever encountered. You can make pages very easily. And then you can actually split traffic to the page. So if you have one URL and it's gonna put 50% of the traffic on one page, 50% on the other. You can add other pages. We've done pages with 6 at once if we have enough traffic. And then it actually tells you in there if your page is converting better at a statistically significant rate. And all you do is you figure out which page is winning, and then you send all your traffic there. And like that's marketing.
Do you use HubSpot?
We do, yeah.
Have you tried their A/B testing for landing pages as well?
We've used the landing page builder on HubSpot. Brian, have you used the A/B testing tool in there?
I've used it for some of the events. I haven't used it for. Yeah,
Have you used it?
Go pull up sites on.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that option. I just haven't used it yet, but
I'm sure it's good. Like HubSpot, I feel like everything HubSpot does is good enough. It's never like amazing, but it probably works with everything else you're doing. And I'm sure if they have an A/B testing tool, they're all the same. They're all using similar. There's like 3 different equations you can use to get to statistical significance. And they're all going to give you pretty much the same answer one way or another. They're all going to be close. So, and there's probably more than 3. I'm just putting out a number. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, Unbounce. And if you do want to use it, Unbounce is kind of expensive. I think it's about $100 a month. But we have a 20% discount on that link if you do want to use it. Another applied, way to use analytics is Google Ads, or just like pricing your ads. How much, if Maggie, you were asking about Google Ads, and fortunately it's subsidized for you.
Yes.
But if it wasn't, what would be that cost per click you're willing to absorb? I have a couple industries up here that are, I just have the highest categories by total cost per click because I thought it was interesting. But like, why do you think that industries like insurance, loans, mortgage, I don't know if you can read that, but it says insurance, people are spending $54 a click. Lending, $44 a click. Mortgage, also lending, I don't know why, 47 a click. Why do you think people spend this much on a click?
They're making a lot.
It's worth it.
They're making hay. they're making a lot of money on it. But the ability to know when to stop is really important, especially in a high stakes game like this. A big insurance company could be spending, tens of thousands of dollars a day. And if they accidentally double their cost per click because they're in a bidding war, they could waste 10 grand like that. And the tool that we usually look to, and it's super simple. You can do it on pen and paper. You can do it for your own company. Is the sales funnel. Has anyone ever used a funnel like this to map out their buyer journey? So I guess what have you guys used it for?
Oh, say that again?
Good. It's just a good time for a question. What have you used it for?
A sales funnel,
Yeah.
like, I've used it on my freelancing, like optimizing every step of their journey, like awareness to a lot of it. Like,
Awesome.
looking at the data on each level.
That's huge. And has that helped? Do you think it's helped inform your campaigns?
Yeah, like you said, it can be a science. That's what I like about it. You can look at each step. Okay, the first time they hear about it, do A/B testing, kind of all over again.
Yeah. Break it down to every step of the conversion.
Yeah.
And this is a really like extrapolated version of it. And you could have clicks to clicked on a product. What's the ratio of click to click on a product, to add the product to cart, to checkout initiated, to abandoned, to like literally every single part of this. And you add, okay, well, our click to add the cart is 20%. And that can really inform, is that high, is that low? How's it doing compared to our other campaigns? So there's a lot you can do with this, but at a basic level, what we're looking at here is they're spending $2 a click. And so they spent $4,000 in ad spend, they got $10,000 in sales. For someone who's in apparel, that might be break even on the first sale. It might be financially, might make sense. It might not. As time has gone on, ads have got more competitive, and a lot of people would play this game to make money, to make the profit on the second sale. And that's what we're seeing more in advertising. Like as the ad space has got more competitive, like the last 5 years, a lot of like e-commerce people seem to be playing the game to acquire the customer at break even, and then just knowing that they have to sell again and again and again. And enterprise software, this is more the space that we operate in, and I put some like an extreme example in here. But in enterprise software, the economics are a lot different. So in like apparel sales or e-commerce, you might only want to spend a cap of $2 a click, or $1 a click, or 30 cents a click. If you have an expensive software that you're selling for $30,000 or $100,000 a year, you'll be willing to absorb a much higher cost per click. And so using a funnel like this, where you know what a sale is worth, can help you make a data informed decision on what's the most you're willing to spend on a click. We have a client right now who tells us all the time, if we can get leads for $1,000 a lead, like we'll take it all day long, because the product sells for so much money. And it's all just a game. It's crazy to think like $1,000 a lead, that's a lot of money to spend on a lead. But if that customer is worth that much money, play that game all day. And actually I had a conversation with someone over at LinkedIn. He's a higher up over there, and we were talking about the economics of LinkedIn ads, because LinkedIn, has anyone run ads on LinkedIn? OCG again, obviously. It's very expensive, right? It's known for being like the most expensive digital ad platform, really. And the reason is that they can put you in front of the right buyers. I was having a conversation with someone over at LinkedIn about, and it was a couple of years ago, before we had bigger B2B customers, we had these we had EvaBot, they're selling to real estate agents. The LTV was, less than $2,000. It wasn't quite enough to justify spending on LinkedIn. So I was asking, this guy, hey, what's the big use case for LinkedIn ads? And he told me the story. He said, well, we have a insurance product on here, right? I've been talking to these people with an insurance product. And this product can be sold to the top 300 hospitals in the United States. And, actually, I think it's like the top 300 hospitals in the world. And there's 2 to 3 decision makers per hospital in the world that can possibly buy it. And it sells for $3 million a year. So there's maybe 1,000 to 1,200 people in your total pool of total buyers in the whole world. Well, LinkedIn can put ads in front of those people. And that company was willing to spend, that crazy, it was an absurd amount per click. I think that they were willing to spend because they'll sell it for $3 million. If they get 30 clicks, they're probably going to get a customer. If they're spending, say, $1,000 a click, you spend $30,000 to make a $3 million sale. Sounds pretty good, right?
The thing about enterprise too is that once a company makes a decision on software, it's going to take a lot to get them to switch to something else.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're buying a t-shirt,
Yeah.
you're going to change your mind all day. So
It's such a quicker
it's
process. It's a very different customer. And we work in B2B a lot. That's really become our bread and butter. And now actually we run a lot of LinkedIn ads on in the background, and they get us a few leads, and they're not as outrageous as I say they can be, but they're usually a couple hundred at the most per lead. But
yeah, well, enterprise is even a different category from B2B.
yeah, it's bigger B2B, medium size is really what we do. We don't even do the big. We've done big enterprise, and that was actually pretty tough. Because we were with a company that's selling to the Sonys and the Panasonics, and we did some work in that space, and it's definitely a different animal too. Things just move at a snail's pace. Question for y'all, and I think everyone's got the point by now. A, B, C, or D?
D.
Thank you. I was gonna say I'd have to send Brian after some of you. I have some other examples of how you can use the funnel in here. So we talked about how you're using the funnel for just to break down every single step of the buyer journey. And you can imagine this really stretched out, or you can redo this to match your funnel if you get an event set up properly. But you can tell if your conversion rate has dropped. You can compare campaigns historically. Hey, month by month, have things dropped or are things going up? It's a great way to use a funnel. And then just plug that data into that A/B testing calculator from Neil Patel. And there you go. You're making data-driven, informed, statistically valid, you're making decisions based on statistically valid data. And if you're able to, there's a lot of tools like Google Analytics that can help you figure out this stuff. How many clicks are we getting? How many checkouts are we getting? And you can start to just compare your different campaigns, your different product lines, plug it into the A/B test calculator, and boom. You can use it to predict sales. This is probably one of the biggest things. We usually do a mix of both. We do a lot of projections with the funnel. We'll have our current data. We'll know what our conversion rates are step to step. And then we'll be able to plan out, okay, well, if we add, say, $30,000 in ad spend, what's the ROI of that campaign going to be? And you can use just this, a little bit more robust version of this to figure out the return on your investment on different advertising campaigns. So if you have, $2,000 a month to spend on ads, how many clicks can that drive? How many leads? What is that worth to the company at the end of the day? And actually, this is actually a screenshot of one of our bigger funnel analysis. We don't have to dive into the whole thing, but on the left side, it's every single step of that funnel. And then on the right side, we were able, we had 3 scenarios: pessimistic, target, optimistic. And then we were able to plan out what the actual conversion rate data. What did it actually look like when we started running the campaign? Are we on track? What targets are we hitting? What targets are we maybe missing? And when you break it down like this, you can see if any stage of the funnel is underperforming, like here. At a glance, you can see that like this 20%, well, that's on the pessimistic outcome side of things. So how can we maybe improve that number, which is our conversion rate to lead, and get back on target? This tool, like, it's really helped us inform a lot of campaigns on the marketing side. It's probably been a part of every campaign we've run, as we do a projection like that to kick things off and keep us on track. And actually, just recently, we used a funnel like that for us is a win, because we helped them see their funnel. Is actually that company that I was talking about that had a 0.7% conversion rate to lead earlier on. They had a huge bottleneck really in their funnel. We pinpointed it down to a landing page. Hey, your landing page is your website is really underperforming. And we were able to pitch, probably the most expensive landing page that we've ever pitched. But at the end of the day, us redoing that landing page doubled their lead volume for the whole company. We estimated that it at least drove an extra 300,000 in ARR to the company, just literally a month's worth of work. Maybe actually, no, it was like a 2 or 3 month project. They were a little slower, they're enterprise or B2B, but it was still like 2 or 3 months of work. For them, not a huge investment, but the impact, because it was data driven, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And that's really the power of using funnels like that, just to inform what you work on, because if you're not using some process to prioritize the right projects, you might spend your time working on something that's not really going to move the needle all that much. Actually, that leads to this kind of project management component that we're going to talk about. Has anyone here heard of the ICE method other than Brian? So the ICE method is a project management tool. It's actually like a really simple way to prioritize what we work on. We use it over at True Venture Marketing about probably once a month or so. We'll outline all of our projects for each client and help prioritize what to work on. ICE stands for impact, confidence, and ease. And then we create a score for each of these and multiply them. So impact on a scale of 1 to 10, we want something that's high impact, right? We want a project that's going to make money. And so we'll look at a project that we have, say it's a landing page. Well, what's the impact of this going to be? Do we think we could double the conversion rate? Do you think we could increase the conversion rate by 10%, 20%? What's the impact? How confident are we that this will succeed, right? We want to be confident. So a higher score means higher confidence. And then ease, this is the one that's easier to slip up on, but you also want a higher score on ease. Easier is higher. Because at the end of the day, what we're going to do is multiply our impact by confidence by ease. And that gives us our ICE score. We typically just do this in a spreadsheet. We use Asana to do task management and project management, but bigger initiatives, like once a month, we'll just go into a spreadsheet and outline, hey, what are these big, if you will, the boulder projects, like the boulders and some big rocks, not like boldness, but we'll put our projects in a spreadsheet and just do an ICE score for each of them. If we're feeling really fancy, we'll use a funnel to project the cash value to get our impact score. But honestly, you can usually just say, I think this can really help us, or maybe not. Put it in a spreadsheet, get your ICE score, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes when you're comparing different campaigns, things look like, oh, it's really a toss-up, but then you do this multiplication, and I think it forces you to stare at the bigger problems, because when you're multiplying 3 numbers, you wind up with a score like 120 versus 60. And it's like, oh, obviously we need to work on this problem when it might have been a toss-up before. So it just, it's really simple, super easy to implement. And it's not necessarily like hard data, but it's a great way to use this kind of anecdotal data to inform decisions. And you can give this to your team to use, like you don't have to be a CEO to use this tool. Anyone at your team, anyone you work with, from the intern to to anyone, can prioritize what they work on based on the ICE method. Super flexible. You can use it in marketing, product management. Salespeople can use it, engineers even. Like we see that all the time.
Are there criteria for the different score for like the 1 through 10 scores, or do you just kind of eyeball it?
We just kind of talk about it, like, and it's more important that everything's using the same criteria when you're doing the analysis. Like we'll kind of deliberate, like we'll be like, hey, well, what do you think's more valuable? What do you think is going to have a higher impact on the bottom line? Sometimes confidence can be really tricky because it's hard to say what we're confident in, but Brian and I'll debate it. And we'll usually come together at like a happy medium.
I say usually we typically do is use the funnel like he was showing, where we'd say, okay, well, like the ad that we can see that there's just no one's like adding the stuff to their cart, so we need to focus on that. So where are the different ways, where are the different breakpoints in the funnel? Add those in the project, and then that's where we kind of get the impact. Be like, okay, if we do this, we can expect to make X amount of money. Yeah. So the impact's going to be obviously higher. Yeah, and sometimes confidence comes down to like, oh yeah, their checkout process is super weird, like, and it performs really bad. Like that's an opportunity where you can say, well, we're confident that if we fix this, and fix what's broken, like it's gonna move your metrics up. And sometimes it's more obvious than you'd think just to find that those confidence levels. And sometimes, you're running out of the low-hanging fruit and you have to get more creative and take bigger swings. And it's a little harder to get the confidence on. So we'd actually talked about this a little earlier with the funnel, but one of the other big applications is using a pricing or a funnel like this to calculate our ROI. This is that same example, different numbers of that one company that had the low conversion rate on their homepage and landing page experiences. And I actually have a link to this spreadsheet. If you do want to, if you want to map out maybe a sales funnel for your own company, maybe if you have an app, it's how many app store visits are we getting, how many people are downloading, how many people are registering, or creating their account, how many people add billing information, and how many people ultimately wind up buying the app. Like you can replace these steps with your own buyer journey. And then just go in, if you know how to use not Google Analytics, it'd be the Apple App Store Analytics, and they're set up right. You can just plug in your own data, get your baseline, and then play around with numbers. A lot of this information of like benchmarks, it's out on the internet, and you can look up, what's the average app install rate on the Apple App Store. That number is going to be out there, and you can just say, oh, are we underperforming? Are we overperforming? Are we underperforming by so much that we can probably really improve that? And you'll be surprised how much a small change can make. Like here, I show it. We have the 0.7% conversion rate to lead to the 1.4, and it cuts your cost per lead in half. It doubles your number of leads, SQLs, potentially. Sometimes there's some attrition. Just because you double your leads doesn't always mean they're all going to be SQLs, but pretty often, it's all ships rise, right? And so it can add a lot of value and cut a lot of costs just by doing that optimization over and over and over again. And that's really the value of being data informed is you can find the next project to work on, knock it out, and work on the next one, test it, see if it works, put it in the Neil Patel A/B testing calculator, and do it again. And these are all tools that all of us, hopefully can use, and you can share them with your team. And create that culture of being data informed and making decisions based on data instead of, if you're the CEO, being the go-to person for every single question. Hey, do we prioritize this or this? Do we do this or this? What do we do? Having these tools can really help people, operate more autonomously and more effectively. And that is it. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Well, thanks everybody so much. We had a great time learning from you. Make sure to join us next month. We have a presentation from Catherine, who's from the Applied Companies, which is a hiring company, and she'll be talking about how to hire your first employees. So if you're in a small business or you just started one, and you're still hiring, this would be a great presentation to go to. But thank you again, Matt. We appreciated having